I think I killed my wife. She was just 19, still figuring out who she was. Still holding on to hope that love could fix what life had taken from her. And that day she was glowing. Candles lit. Her favorite hoodie on. The kind of smile you send to someone you miss so much it aches. You walked through the door. Her soldier. Her husband. The one she said she couldn't live without. Less than an hour later she was lying still at her desk. A single bullet to the back of the head. The man she trusted with her heart was the only one home. And the question that still echoes louder than any siren that night: what? Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you ignored the warning signs? Not because you were naive, but because you needed to believe they were good for you? Danielle did. She thought love could silence the unease. That keeping the apartment spotless would keep him calm. That walking on eggshells wasn't fear, it was just marriage. She made excuses. Smoothed over the cracks. Told her friends, he just gets a little upset sometimes. But inside those four walls, tension had been building for months. Quiet arguments, sharp words, a phone smashed in anger then replaced with an apology and a kiss. She never told the whole truth. Not really. And by the time anyone realized how bad it was too late. Because the one person she believed would protect her was the one who pulled the trigger. Skylar Nemitz wasn't a stranger. He wasn't some masked figure who crept in through the dark. He was her husband. He bought her that rifle. Taught her how to shoot it. Said she was his world. So what turns a welcome home hug into a shot to the skull? Was it jealousy? Was it rage? Or was it something colder, something he'd been planning from the start? And if she saw it coming, why didn't she leave? We're about to walk through a story of love, control, and the kind of loyalty that can get you killed. Before we go further, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if real stories like this leave you thinking, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have seen the signs? Because this wasn't just a marriage. It was a countdown. And Danielle never knew the clock was ticking. Danielle Ripien was born in Northern California on January 11, 1995. Bright eyes. A contagious laugh. The kind of child who could fill a room just by walking into it. But life started taking from her before she could even form full sentences. Her mother, Elizabeth, passed away from cancer when Danielle was only 2. A memory she never truly had, yet felt the absence of every single day. With her father not in the picture, Danielle and her siblings were taken in by their grandmother, Scarlett. A tough, soft-spoken woman who did her best with what little she had. They lived modestly in McKinleyville. Money was tight. The house was small. But Scarlett gave them a kind of safety, until the day she too was gone. Danielle was just 14. Losing her second mother figure broke something in her. From that moment on, she clung harder to anyone who made her feel seen and safe. Not out of weakness, but because love for Danielle was survival. At school, Danielle was the one everyone noticed, even if she never tried to be. She joined the cheer squad in middle school and carried that passion all the way through high school. The crowd saw the glitter, the flips, the fierce smile. But what most didn't see was the girl showing up early just to feel like she belonged somewhere. She had that kind of personality that made people want to be around her. Friends described her as magnetic, always laughing, always bringing people together. She'd crack jokes, hype you up before a test, and send good luck texts before your big day. But behind the cheer uniform and perfect eyeliner was someone who knew what loneliness tasted like. She didn't talk much about the nights she cried herself to sleep, or the ache that came from seeing classmates' moms cheer them on at games. Instead, she made everyone else feel important. Danielle didn't just survive what life gave her. She carried it with grace without ever asking anyone to carry it for her. What Danielle wanted most wasn't fame, money, or attention. She wanted something so simple it hurt, a place to call home. Not just walls and a roof, but people who stayed. People who chose her. That longing showed up in her relationships. Every boyfriend mattered. Every relationship was serious. Danielle didn't date casually, she loved like it was her only shot at building the life she never had. And she didn't just fall for people, she folded herself into their worlds. Parents, siblings, pets. If she was dating you, she was also trying to become a part of your family. Some saw it as being too much, too fast. But for Danielle, it was how she survived being let down so many times. She wanted to believe someone would stay this time. And when she met Skylar Nemitz online, it felt like the answer to every prayer she'd never said out loud. He was kind, charming, steady. He didn't just offer love. He offered forever. Skylar Nemitz was born in 1994 and raised primarily by his mother, Danette Heller, in a modest home where structure came not from routine, but from rules. Especially when it came to guns. He was barely tall enough to hold one when his mother first taught him how to shoot. Not out of recklessness but pride. Danette believed in responsibility, and for her, that included early firearm education. Skylar wasn't just taught to shoot, he was taught to respect the weapon. Unload it. Lock it. Check it twice. If it's in your hand, you treat it like it's loaded. And he absorbed every word. By the time he was 11, he was practicing with rifles on their rural property. At 15, he was customizing his own AR-15s. Friends say he talked about guns the way other teens talked about cars or video games. To him, precision was power. Mastery was control. And nothing felt more natural than having a weapon within reach. Skylar was intense, even as a teenager. Not in a loud or reckless way, but in how seriously he took everything. Especially himself. He wasn't the type to chase parties or blend into crowds. He had a quiet confidence, a chip on his shoulder, and a need to prove something. If he said he'd do something, he'd follow through. No matter what. He didn't have a lot of close friends. But the few people he let in described him as disciplined, opinionated, and proud. He liked structure. He liked knowing where everyone stood. And he liked being right. That's why the military wasn't just a career choice, it was his answer. Skylar believed the Army would give him purpose. Order. A future that didn't depend on anyone but himself. So right after graduation he enlisted. Boot camp didn't scare him. In fact, it suited him. The drills. The ranks. The expectations. It gave him exactly what he craved. Control over the chaos. By the time he was 18, Skylar was deep into Army training at Fort Benning, Georgia. Infantry track. All discipline, no distractions. But there was still a part of him that craved more than medals or mission briefs. He wanted admiration. Someone who would see him not just as a soldier but as a man worth believing in. That's when Danielle appeared. They met online through mutual friends from back home. Just a few messages. A couple of late-night chats. And suddenly he was hooked. Danielle was warm. Open. Unfiltered. She didn't challenge his need to lead, she admired it. She made him feel like the hero he was training to become. To Skylar, she wasn't just beautiful, she was willing to follow his lead without questioning him. She didn't see the sharp edges, only the armor. And he didn't see a high school senior. He saw a future wife. A loyal partner. Someone who'd fit perfectly into the life he was building, on his terms. They didn't meet in a coffee shop or through a friend of a friend. They met the way a lot of young couples do now, through Facebook. A few mutual friends. A message. A reply. And that was it. She was 17. Still in high school. He was 18. A few weeks away from heading into Army basic training. Different stages of life, but emotionally, they connected instantly. Danielle told her best friend he was the one within days. Skylar felt the same. He liked how open she was, how easy it was to talk to her. She made him feel important, admired, even needed. And Danielle? She saw Skylar as everything she had been looking for. Dependable, focused, someone who knew exactly what he wanted. They moved fast. A month into messaging, Danielle left her home in California and moved in with Skylar and his mother, Danette. Danette treated her like family from the start, warm, accepting, even protective. Danielle didn't just move in. She became part of the household. Started calling Danette Mom. And meant it. It didn't take long for Skylar to propose. 3 months after their first message, he got down on one knee beneath the stars on Nealon Mountain. Danielle said yes before he could finish the question. They married on the day Skylar graduated from basic training. A 10-minute courthouse ceremony, him in his Army blues, her in her best dress, glowing. No cake. No reception. But Danielle didn't need all that. She had the one thing she wanted most. A family that finally felt like hers. Together they packed up what little they had and headed north, just the two of them and their dogs, to Washington State, where Skylar was stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord. They moved into a tiny apartment in Lakewood. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Danielle enrolled in a local high school to finish her diploma. She picked up a job selling granite countertops. Skylar trained, drilled, and came home every evening to a wife who wanted to make everything just right. At first it looked like a fresh start. But the cracks weren't far behind. Danielle started changing small habits. She made sure dinner was done before Skylar walked in. She kept the apartment spotless, not because she loved cleaning, but because she wanted to avoid issues. She began to frame things in terms of his comfort, his mood, his approval. He just gets stressed sometimes, she told a friend. He works really hard, I don't want to make things worse. Skylar didn't yell. He didn't hit. But Danielle knew the rules. She felt them every time he questioned a decision she made without him. Every time his silence lasted a little too long. Every time she apologized for things that weren't her fault. What looked like admiration in the beginning had slowly become expectation. Skylar didn't just love Danielle. He relied on her obedience. She started making herself smaller so he could feel bigger. Not all at once, but enough that people close to her started noticing. Have you ever seen someone confuse control for love? Comment below, because sometimes it's not the yelling or threats that show you what a relationship really is. It's the silence, the tension, the way someone stops being themselves just to keep things peaceful. The first few months in Washington felt manageable, until reality caught up. Bills, groceries, yes, rent. Danielle was working hard to contribute, but between her part-time job and finishing school, the numbers never quite added up. Skylar, now fully immersed in Army life, didn't want to hear excuses. He expected the home to be kept in order, the fridge stocked, the place spotless. Arguments started as whispers behind closed doors. Then doors slammed. Skylar didn't like being questioned, and Danielle didn't like feeling like she had to ask permission to breathe. Money brought pressure, and pressure exposed personality. Danielle, who once laughed at everything, started measuring her words. Skylar, who once kissed her forehead before work, started coming home quiet, irritable, and quick to criticize. She stopped sharing photos. She stopped reaching out to certain friends. When her old cheer coach messaged her to check in, Danielle replied, "Things are fine. Just busy." But fine was code. For tension. For walking on eggshells. And that tension? It was about to find a name: Jeremy Henry. Jeremy Henry had been Danielle's friend since high school. Nothing romantic, nothing hidden, just someone from home who made her laugh when things felt heavy. But for Skylar, Jeremy was a threat. Not because of anything Jeremy did, but because of what Skylar feared. That Danielle might one day realize she had options. It started with questions. Why'd he message you? Did you delete anything? Were you with him alone? Danielle brushed it off at first. Told herself he was just being protective. Told Jeremy everything was fine. But Skylar's suspicion wasn't passing, it was growing. If Danielle mentioned another man, any man, Skylar's mood would shift instantly. She began avoiding the topic altogether. She stopped hanging out with coworkers. She let friendships fade to avoid fights at home. Behind closed doors, her world got smaller. And her phone became the new battleground. Skylar went through it often. Looking for clues. Looking for betrayal that wasn't there. Danielle once confided to a friend that she wasn't even sure what she'd done wrong. Just that, "He gets mad when I talk to people." Even silence couldn't protect her anymore. And the worst part? When she tried to tell people, they didn't listen. They thought she was exaggerating. But Danielle knew what fear felt like. And now it lived with her. Danielle didn't cry wolf. She didn't make scenes or air out her problems on social media. She dropped hints. Quiet ones. She'd mention how upset Skylar got over small things. How she had to clean the entire apartment before he got home just to keep the peace. How one night he got so angry he smashed her phone, and the next morning bought her a brand new one like it never happened. When she told a close friend about it, the reaction was lukewarm. "He just snapped," Danielle said quickly. "He didn't mean it. He felt awful." Her voice softened when she said it, like she was the one at fault for making him mad. It wasn't the last time she'd say, "I forgive him." It became a line she used to protect herself from the truth. And to convince others there was no need to worry. Then came the birthday gift. A custom AR-15 trimmed in blue, her favorite color. Skylar presented it with pride. Taught her how to shoot it. Made her feel like it was theirs. She posed with it at the range. Smiled for the camera. That same rifle would later be the one used to end her life. And Danielle never saw it coming. October 16, 2014, wasn't just another Thursday. Danielle had been counting down the days. Skylar was finally coming home. After 19 days away at a field training exercise, he was back. She wanted everything to be perfect. The apartment was spotless. She'd lit candles. Laid out their favorite pizza. And despite being just 19 herself, she managed to get him what he asked for. A bottle of Sailor Jerry rum and a bottle of Fireball whiskey. She'd gone out of her way. Used a favor from a friend to make it happen. Skylar had no idea who helped her buy the liquor. That night, Danielle was glowing. Before he arrived, she FaceTimed her best friend, Michaela. She could barely sit still, showing off the clean apartment, giggling over what she planned to wear, beaming at the thought of holding her husband again. When Skylar walked in, Michaela caught a glimpse of him in the background, smiling, relaxed, drink in hand. Danielle ran into his arms and curled up in his lap like they were still teenagers in love. It looked like a reunion. It sounded like peace. They ended the call at 5:45 p.m. 12 minutes later, Danielle was dead. The neighbors heard it first. A single sharp crack that cut through the early evening silence. No shouting. No argument. Just that one unmistakable sound. Then came Skylar's voice. Frantic. Loud. Slurred with panic. He opened the apartment door, trembling, and yelled for help. When the couple across the hall rushed in, they found Skylar pacing, wide-eyed, trying to form sentences. She was cleaning the gun, he stammered. It just went off. It was an accident. Danielle was still in the chair. Slouched forward at her desk, her laptop screen shattered by the same bullet that tore through the back of her head. She never stood a chance. Skylar didn't check for a pulse. He didn't call 911 himself. Instead, the neighbors made the call while Skylar stumbled over explanations. By the time police arrived, the apartment had already shifted. The gun was no longer where it had been fired. The ammo magazine had been kicked under the bed. And the whiskey, the one thing Danielle went out of her way to get, was gone. Skylar had poured it out, flushed it, tossed the bottles off the balcony. When officers asked him what happened, his story kept changing. First, it was Danielle's accident. Then it was his. But something about it didn't sit right. At the station, Skylar sat slouched in a chair, hands trembling. I didn't mean to. I thought it was unloaded, he said. That was version 1. Detectives gave him space to explain. But the more he talked, the less sense it made. At first, he said Danielle had been handling the rifle and accidentally shot herself. But the wound was at the back of her head. The bullet's angle made that impossible. Next, he claimed he was the one holding the AR-15, trying to clear it when it fired by mistake. He said it was pointed down. He said it must have bumped against something. He said he didn't realize it was still loaded. But the shot was too direct, too precise. And it came from close range. Then there was the cleanup. The rifle wasn't near Danielle. It had been placed inside a closet. The magazine hidden. The bottles destroyed. If this had truly been a panicked accident, why the effort to hide everything? Skylar said he was scared. That he wasn't thinking clearly. But his clothes were clean. Not a single trace of blood. No sign he had tried to help her. No hand on her shoulder. No attempt to stop the bleeding. And to the detectives watching him, that wasn't the panic of a man in shock. It was the silence of someone trying to rewrite the ending. At first, detectives gave Skylar room to explain. He said the rifle slipped. That his leg bumped it. That he never meant to hurt her. He insisted it was an accident. But then he changed the story again. This time, the gun had been on his shoulder. Near his face. He said he was clearing it when it went off. Detectives let him talk. Let the details shift. But every version made less sense than the last. One fact didn't change. Danielle was shot directly in the back of the head. Close range. No warning. No struggle. The forensic report confirmed it wasn't a misfire. The muzzle had been just inches away when the bullet passed through her skull and into her laptop screen. The shot wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. And Skylar, a trained infantryman, knew exactly how to handle that rifle. He built AR-15s from scratch. He was obsessed with safety. His friends called him a perfectionist when it came to handling weapons. So how did a man like that make such a basic mistake? The detectives weren't buying it. And the deeper they looked, the more the cracks widened. Among Danielle's things, investigators found a receipt from the day before she died. It was for a bouquet of red roses. Skylar claimed Danielle bought them for a coworker's wife. Said she told him it was a birthday gift. But there were no flowers in the apartment. No mention of any birthday from her workplace. And no confirmation that the roses were ever delivered to anyone. It didn't add up. Detectives couldn't say for sure who the roses were for, but they knew this. If Skylar had reason to believe Danielle was hiding something, it would have been enough to light a match. Then came the liquor. Skylar had asked for 2 bottles while he was still away at training. He assumed Danielle would figure it out. She did, but not on her own. She got help from Jeremy Henry, her friend. The one Skylar had already shown jealousy toward. When Skylar found out, it set off something. According to friends, Danielle hadn't told him the truth about Jeremy's involvement. And when he found out the full story, he didn't just get angry. He felt betrayed. To Skylar, this wasn't just about alcohol. It was about control. And in his mind, he was losing it. Detectives pulled Skylar and Danielle's message history. What they found wasn't love, it was a pattern. He called her names over small purchases. Accused her of hiding things. He questioned where she went, who she saw, what she spent. In one string of texts, Danielle tried to calm him down over a misunderstanding. He responded with silence. Then a threat to come home early. Another message read, "You're lying. You're always lying." All over a $12 subscription. It wasn't about money. It was about control. And now, with Jeremy back in the picture, even just as a favor, Skylar believed Danielle had chosen someone else. Forensics sealed the rest. The angle of the shot. The location of the entry wound. The absence of any defensive marks or accidental trigger mechanics. The rifle hadn't slipped. It hadn't bounced. It had been held, aimed, and fired, with purpose. His timeline was full of holes. His actions afterward, hiding the gun, dumping the bottles, made it worse. In the end, Skylar didn't just fail to convince detectives. He convinced them of something else entirely. That this wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. When Skylar Nemitz walked into the courtroom, he didn't look like a killer. Clean cut. Calm. Dressed in a suit instead of a uniform. But the prosecution wasn't focused on appearances. They were focused on what they could prove. Their case was simple. Skylar wasn't just trained, he was obsessed. He knew everything about the AR-15. He built them, customized them, cleaned them, handled them with precision. So the idea that he forgot there was a bullet in the chamber? They didn't buy it. Neither did the experts who took the stand. Prosecutors told the jury this wasn't a freak accident. It was rage. Fueled by jealousy and control, masked by a quiet intensity that had been building for months. They walked the jury through the motive. Danielle lied about who helped her buy the whiskey. Skylar found out it was Jeremy. He felt betrayed. He waited until her friend ended the video call. And then when her back was turned, he fired. Not in fear. Not in self-defense. But out of fury. This wasn't recklessness, they argued. This was personal. The defense had one job: introduce doubt. They didn't deny Skylar pulled the trigger. They didn't deny Danielle was dead because of it. But they said he didn't mean to kill her. They pointed to the chaos of that moment. How he'd just come home from weeks in the field. How he hadn't seen his wife in nearly 20 days. They said he was tired, emotional, and handling a weapon too casually. It wasn't murder, they insisted. It was a horrible, irreversible mistake. To drive that point home, Skylar took the stand. It was a risky move. Most defendants don't do it. But Skylar wanted the jury to hear his version, straight from him. He cried. He told them he loved Danielle more than anything. He said he never meant to hurt her, that his whole world ended the moment the gun went off. He described the panic, the regret, the feeling of losing her and not knowing how to fix it. Some jurors watched with heavy expressions. Others looked away. But the question in everyone's mind wasn't whether he was sorry. It was whether he was responsible. The jury took the case with heavy shoulders. 7 days passed. 7 days of replaying testimony, reviewing evidence, debating intent. When they returned, the courtroom held its breath. Not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of first-degree manslaughter. The decision meant the jury didn't believe Skylar planned to kill Danielle, but they also didn't believe it was just an accident. He was reckless. He was responsible. And now he would face the consequences. Danielle's family wept quietly. Some were relieved Skylar would serve time. Others struggled with the fact that the verdict didn't carry the weight of the loss they felt. To them, she wasn't just a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and now a memory. Skylar's mother stood behind him the entire time. Even after the verdict, she held on to her belief that it was a mistake, just one that couldn't be undone. The public was divided. Some saw a remorseful young man. Others saw a manipulator who dodged a harsher sentence. If you were on that jury, how would you have ruled? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was justice served, or was it just the best the system could do? Skylar Nemitz was sentenced to 13 years and 6 months in prison. The maximum allowed for first-degree manslaughter with a firearm enhancement. He stood quietly as the judge read the sentence. No outbursts, no emotion. Just a nod and a quiet return to his seat. To Danielle's family, it wasn't enough. Not for the daughter they'd buried. Not for the sister whose phone would never light up their screens again. Not for the girl who once believed love could heal every wound. Her father called the sentence a slap in the face. Her friends echoed the same. 13 years felt like a countdown to his release, not justice. Skylar's mother remained publicly supportive. She sat in the front row every day of the trial. She said she believed him then. She believes him still. In the years that followed, the case caught national attention. It was featured on 48 Hours, sparking debate around domestic control, military training, and emotional abuse that doesn't always leave a mark. Skylar filed an appeal in 2018. He argued for a shorter sentence. The court reduced his time slightly due to house arrest served before trial, but the conviction stood. Danielle never got to finish high school. Never got to walk across a graduation stage. Never got the future she imagined in those early messages with Skylar. But her name wasn't forgotten. Her friends continued to post tributes each year. Her family set up scholarships in her memory. And those who knew her say they still hear her laugh in the quiet moments. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't come with bruises or screams. Sometimes it just asks you to stay small. To stop asking questions. To be easy to love. And sometimes that's how you know it was never love at all. Danielle believed in love. She believed that with enough effort, enough patience, enough understanding, things would work out. That the man she married would soften eventually. That the moments of tension were just growing pains. But what she didn't realize was that love that needs to be proven every day isn't love, it's pressure. And when someone starts shrinking your world, cutting off your voice, and deciding who you're allowed to be around, that's not protection. That's control. There's a line between passion and possession. And once it's crossed, there's no going back. Skylar didn't start with a gun in his hand. He started with a rule here, a correction there. A look that made her second-guess herself. Until one day Danielle stopped sharing, stopped asking, and started apologizing for things that weren't her fault. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. But if someone tells you who you can talk to, if you find yourself walking on eggshells just to keep the peace, if you feel more anxious than loved, that's not a relationship. That's a warning. Danielle's story is heartbreaking. But it's also a lifeline. Because someone watching this right now might recognize the signs. And get out before the silence turns deadly. If someone isolates you, it isn't love. It's a cage. Don't wait for the door to close. If this story moved you, share it, because someone out there might need to hear it today.